Welcome to the One Big Idea podcast, your guide to making it in Web3. Each week, I sit down with the brightest founders, creators, and thought leaders to unpack the lessons, strategies, and trends you need to know for venturing into the world of crypto. This episode is brought to you by Rug Radio, the world's largest decentralized media company, changing the way creators build, distribute, and own their content. To learn more about this creators first community, visit Rug Radio at www.rug.fm. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of One Big Idea. I am joined this week by the one and only Zeneca, the founder and CEO of Zen Academy and the 333 Club, the chief Zen officer of Blur. Definitely want to chat about that. And also the publisher of the free intro to NFTs guide. So make sure you go to 30daysofnfts.com to learn more about that. We'll definitely talk about that as well. So Zeneca, welcome.
Oh, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man, this has been a long time coming. We were talking beforehand of, both of us are connected to Carly and have jumped on her show. And so it's a real treat for me to have you on the show this week.
Yeah, likewise. I got to get you on my show, and then we've got completed the circle.
There we go. Then we got the full triangle going on, and then we've got to somehow all three of us get on the same show. Yeah. Well, cool, man. So I would love to know a little bit more about your backstory. First, starting with the name Zeneca, obviously is alluding to Seneca and Stoicism, and so I would love to know more about what impact Stoicism has had on your life, and how you came up with that name.
Yeah. So I got really into Stoicism in, I think, 2015, maybe 2016. And I just sort of went down this rabbit hole of philosophy in general. And then through the various schools of philosophy, Stoicism is the one that resonated most with me. And within Stoicism, Seneca is the philosopher that resonated the most with me. So I've always, since then, really it impacted the way that I look at the world and the way I think about things, and has been this running thread in my mind. And when it came to creating a Twitter account, which I did in March last year, March 2021, everyone basically had pseudonyms, and that was the thing to do. So I said, all right, what's a good name? And I literally just looked around my desk, and I think I had a book from Seneca, or I have a notebook that my fiance got me where she has a quote by Seneca that she'd engraved at the front. So a book was on my desk. I can't remember which one it was. And I was like, oh, Seneca, maybe there's something I can do with that. Came up with Zeneca because I didn't want to just copy Seneca, and then it was in my mind, maybe Zen Buddhism, something there. It was when COVID was rampant. AstraZeneca is obviously a pharmaceutical company that was giving vaccines, so maybe there was something unconscious there, and it just popped into my head, and that's where the name came from.
That's amazing. I don't know if you can see it, but back there I've got my daily journal from Ryan Holiday. So I'm reading a new Stoic quote every week. I'm curious if there was outside of trying to think through the name, what made you gravitate to Stoicism to begin with? I can share personally, for me, it was very much going through a rough patch in my life. I had suffered concussion, post-concussive syndrome, was looking for something to keep me grounded in the day-to-day. And so I picked up meditation and really leaned into Stoicism and Zen Buddhism as well. So I'm curious if there was anything that made you gravitate towards it, or was it just a heightened curiosity?
I think, it was I've gone through depression, anxiety, substance abuse, alcoholism for most of my life up until 3-4 years ago. And so I was definitely going through something at that time. I can't remember specifically what it was, but it would have been something that I was let me try this. Or I don't think it was sort of a conscious specific thing where I was maybe this is going to help me. It was just, I literally had a book, Letters from a Stoic by Seneca, and I bought it 4 years prior on a recommendation from someone else, and it was sitting on my thing, and eventually I picked it up and started reading it, and it was oh, this is awesome. And it sort of just really and immediately resonated with me, because I think the way of thinking, it's very logical and very you have control over only very limited amount of things, and then everything else is outside of your control. And most people tend to have their emotions swing based on things that are outside of their control, and that doesn't make that much sense. So, and it just immediately I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly right. And I just found myself nodding along like every single page I read. I was like, yep. And then I think Seneca especially had a really like poetic way of speaking, and that just like maybe made it stick a little more than any other writer. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I'm sure it has come quite in handy, thinking through, where we're at right now from the macro climate. Literally, as we're recording this, it's been highly volatile today. Everything is down in red. For when you guys listen to this, this is the day that CZ has announced that he is buying FTX after a slew of back and forth fighting between him and SBF. And so the entire Twitter world is ablaze.
It's so crazy.
Got off it. It's crazy. I think it was the blood moon that happened last night. I found myself, I woke up halfway through it and it was going on. And so, I think there's just a lot going on, but to the point of having something to ground you and be like, all right, a lot of this is outside of my control, and just focusing on the energy that you can put in and where that's best focused, I think is a super important framework, whether it is Stoicism or whatever it is for everyone in their own lives, having that to fall back on. Because I see it show up in your actions and how you tweet and how you think about things. It very much feels like it's pervasive in your outlook as it relates to crypto as well.
Yeah, it's sort of like, people, I sometimes get asked, do you practice Stoicism on a daily basis? Do you meditate? Do you journal? Do you do anything? And then I used to from time to time, and I had periods in my life where I did that, but for a long time now, no, I've not really done any of it. It's just sort of like this thing that's this running theme throughout the way that I think about everything. And it's just ingrained in my thoughts and actions now that it's just there.
It's subconscious at this point. Well, thank you. I'd love you sharing that. And I'd love to know more about how you got into crypto to begin with. You talked a little bit about when you created this character, but what has your entire journey into crypto looked like?
So the first time I heard about Bitcoin, I think it was 2011, because my background before really getting full-time into this space was I was a professional poker player. And so poker players were very, very early to crypto, and there's a lot of overlap between poker and crypto and trading. And specifically 2011, because Bitcoin is relatively new, and the US government banned or made it illegal for people to play online poker, or very difficult to play online poker within America. And so these Bitcoin poker sites were popping up. And so it became on my radar and a lot of people's radar, but never really looked too much into it or thought too much about it, just shrugged it off. And that was kind of it for up until 2017, when Ethereum started making noise. And I had a friend, Jamie, actually, he's my co-host of one of my podcasts. And I think when Ethereum was $7, he said, is this something we should be buying and looking into? And, it took us a while to get our act together. And then when it was $100 something, we finally bought in, and then, went through that whole bull run. And that was a wild ride, 2017, but I didn't really understand or get it, or wasn't super serious, and it was very speculative, and it was fun to see number go up, and it was gambling on random altcoins. But then the bear market hit, and it was oh, okay, well, that was a fun experiment, and just didn't really stick around because I didn't have that conviction, and it just seemed didn't make any sense to me, really. So Ethereum seemed cool, but I couldn't just conceptualize the use cases, and I couldn't see anything truly. I just smart contracts. That's all these smart people say cool stuff about it, but I don't get it. I can't see it. So went back to poker, and then early 2021 rolled around, and Jamie once again asked me if I knew about NFTs, and I said no. And then he started telling me, because he had some mutual friends that were into them, and together we went through the whole journey of, oh, these things sound like a scam, they make no sense, to oh, okay, maybe there's something there. And eventually from there, sort of went further down the rabbit hole, started to come around and see that there was something to it. And then not just NFTs, but there was this whole DeFi thing and ecosystem. I was oh, okay, so there's so much more here now. And I sort of made a conscious decision that was I now want to dedicate most of my time to learning about crypto in general. It wasn't specific to NFTs then. And then over the course of a couple months, sort of gravitated more and more towards NFTs, because honestly, they're just more fun than everything else in crypto.
Yeah, I had a very similar journey where it was like initially got in at 2017, very much was on like the speculation. I was working at Amazon at the time and it felt like every tech bro was just like, oh, put money into this like thing and watch it go up. And then the crash of 2018 happens. I kind of like go away into hiding and then come back. And really it was like NFTs and DeFi that brought me back. I'm curious, like, you spend a lot of time in the space. It can feel like it is a faucet that you can't turn off. It's almost like it's coming from a fire hose and it might be like multiple fire hoses coming at you at any one time. What are your frameworks for really like making sense of the space and where you decide to spend time? And really, where do you find like signal from the noise?
Yeah, it's absolutely like that. It's very overwhelming. And, it was a lot back in early 2021, and that's just got exponentially more insane as time goes on. Just a number of projects and things happening, and it's great because it means there's a lot being built. But it's really tough to stay on top of even a fraction of a percent of everything. And so I think you just sort of have to pick a couple of areas or one area and just like focus on that. So it used to be back in, again, the early days, you could kind of be on top of all of the major NFT projects. You'd be like, oh, what's going on with CryptoPunks? Hash masks, crypto kitties, Bored Apes, this is a new thing, it's gone on there, Artvatars. There were a handful of projects and you could sort of stay abreast of the whole space. Zrun, Top Shots, obviously a couple of the other big ones. And then it got to a point where you couldn't do that anymore, but maybe you could be like, I'm going to stay on top of all of the gaming projects, or I'm going to stay on top of all of the PFP. And then eventually it got to the point where that wasn't even possible. And now I think you just have to pick just a couple of specific projects to really be paying attention to, and then maybe like one sector. So generative art might be one, or maybe like gaming on Solana, or gaming on one platform, or one type of gaming. It's like on-chain games, or whatever it is. And so for me, it's really been, well, I've got Zen Academy and the 3 clubs, like a large percentage of my time is just on my own projects, which makes it convenient. And the other thing is just, I try not to, I just concede that I'm just going to miss so much of like the little things. And then I just try and look at the big picture stuff. So, lately it's been a lot of discussions about royalties, a lot of discussion about the macro situation. So not even just NFTs, but crypto in general. And thinking about things on that level rather than, trying to stay up to date with what's minting next week or what projects are coming up. And it's just sort of been an evolution. And yeah,
it's not easy. And I feel like your framework has to evolve over time. You can either go broad or you can go deep, but you can't really do both. Yeah. And so figuring out where you want to play, what's been useful for me is actually trying to go a bit broad and then leaning in and surrounding myself with people who have gone deep in different areas. Like, I'm not going to be an expert on gaming, but I can find and follow people on Twitter who are. And so, even if I get 50% of what they're ingesting, they're doing all of the legwork, and hopefully I can provide the same value, in other areas. So it is very much a challenge. And I feel like fortunately, more and more curators are coming forward, and we're getting more thought leaders, and we're getting more media companies that are focused on providing that signal over time. But it's by no means an easy task. Then you have days like today where it's like, all right, drop everything that you're doing and just pay attention to what's happening with FTX and Binance. There is no other story to focus on.
I know. It's just crazy. I'm doing 7 Twitter Spaces, podcast recordings, AMAs, and Discord today, amongst other stuff. But especially earlier when I was breaking, I was like, I just want to be glued to this. I want to be watching up only. But it's been like in between breaks checking in. And then I just had like a 2-hour break before this and caught up on a lot there, had dinner. And now it's one of those days where you could just get popcorn out and just follow the memes on Twitter and be like a great day if it wasn't for the price of everything just tanking.
Going to zero. Yeah.
But at this point, I think, like this year, there's people that have survived this and been through, what was it, Celsius, Luna, everything else. It's been 3 Arrows Capital. It's been a crazy year. And now you just got to laugh at a certain point.
Everything, that's what capitulation is. Like, everything that could take your conviction away at this point, if you are still here, you very much believe in the long-term thesis that, or you're just crazy. It was one of my friends was saying earlier, we had a chat going as we're literally watching the ETH red candle just dip and dip and dip and dip. And she said at this point, to your point, it's fun. I would say that fun is absolutely a privilege, right? Hopefully everyone is being very safe and wise, and knowing that like this internet play money, like just be very careful because you are playing with a very risky asset. Definitely thoughts to anyone who is over leveraged right now. Yeah. I do like a couple threads I wanted to pull out because you mentioned all these different, we talked earlier about like all the different podcasts you're doing and jumping on. And I wonder how you manage your energy in this space. I've recently moved into this like solopreneur lifestyle, and you kind of romanticize it, right? Like, I don't know if I did, at least when I left my job, which was like, I'm going to have all this time. Like, I'm going to read, I'm going to write, I'm going to like develop deeper relationships. And then I look up and it's like 2 a.m. and I've only eaten protein bars for the day. And like I've been stuck to my computer, haven't left my room. So I'm very curious how you think about managing your energy and leave it with that.
Yeah. I don't have, I try and take weekends off, and most of the time take weekends off. Aside from that, it's just a lot of work, and it's something that I'm okay with for the time being. And like, I'm going to continually try and get back to a better work-life balance, but there's just a lot going on in the space. And if you're sort of building a lot, doing a lot, you're trying to sort of make a name for yourself, build a personal brand or a company or a project, there's always more that you can do. And like, especially in this space, there's new ideas and there's new content and then just new platforms and new mediums and new people. And it never ends. You need to set your own boundaries and limits, and then be comfortable with that. And so like, there's absolutely days where like I was just in Dubai for 2 weeks because we're moving there in a couple months, and I had to go get some visa stuff sorted and try and find an apartment and all that kind of stuff. And I literally didn't leave my hotel room for like 2.5 days. Like not the hotel, my room. I just ordered room service, and I was just working nonstop basically. And then it was just like a wake up call that it's really easy to fall into that kind of cycle. And so it's like I was missing home, and it was really good to get back because I've got my fiance, we got a dog, and we go outside, and it's still not great. I'm not going out all the time, but it's like it's a bit more balance, and just even that little bit is healthy. So I definitely get how easy it is to fall into that solo work lots protein bar lifestyle. That was me last week. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's an everyday challenge. And I think back to your practice of Stoicism, just like keeping it in the back of your head, that this isn't everything, and to keep it in its place, right? Like not to get too excited about it, not to like fully dive into the work, and recognize that like you need to be present and really invest in everything else around you. I think we're all making those trade-offs. We're all going probably out less and spending less time with loved ones than we would like. And it is about constantly like checking back in. So yeah, from one content creator to another, it's good to know that you're in the trenches as well. It's always it's a constantly a battle.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, I'd love to kind of move forward thinking through just like thoughts on the broader ecosystem. What are I've watched some of your trading to date. I've seen like you be in art blocks. Obviously you were early to Bored Apes. What are your general like frameworks or guidelines for investing in projects?
Yeah, so it's evolved a lot over the last 18 months. Early on, it was very short-term minded because I didn't have much money, liquidity, ETH, nothing really. And so if I bought, like I was early in art blocks and I mint something for 0.1 and then it went to like 0.3 or 0.4, I was like, oh wow, I got to sell. Like that's amazing. And it is amazing to be like 3x or 4x in sometimes in hours or a day or two. It was just like, that was massive for me. Then over time, as like my bankroll grew, I was being successful, the market was bullish, the strategy evolved and changed to maybe mint 2 or 3 of something and then sell 1 to cover the costs and then hold 1. and maybe sell it at like a 10x if it gets there. Otherwise, you just, it goes to zero, and it's like, okay, well, at least I covered my costs, and maybe hold one for the longer term. And then, as time went on, it's just about maybe holding and the ability to hold longer and longer term. And yes, there's some risk that it goes low, but you sort of sell on the way up if you have 5, 10 of a certain NFT, and then you keep a few just because there is a potential in this space for things to go 50x, 100x, 500x, and 1000x in really extreme cases. And it's just evolved. And I think that my approach for like which projects to buy into has changed a little bit. It used to be very much find the higher quality projects with really good teams. And then because I had really limited capital, and then it sort of turned into a spray and pray approach sort of towards the late last year, where there was so much stuff minting, but so much of it was also going up. So it's like, it's okay to mint 10 things every week if 4 of them are going to go really, really well. Now you pick 10 random projects and 0.2 of them are going to go really, really well, if that. So that was the spray and pray phase. And then after Zen Academy and like that launched, which was basically a year ago, I shifted a lot more of my time and attention to content building and less time to trading. And it was more a hybrid approach of like buying to collect as a collector, and buying to, and not really thinking too much about the financial aspect, and then buying to invest, but with a much longer term time horizon, and buying things that I had a lot of conviction in. And that effectively always just came back to art blocks. It's like, that's the one thing that I just keep buying and have been buying and continue to buy. And it's obviously I sell as well when prices go crazy with art blocks, but it's the single project I have the most conviction in the entire NFT space.
Is that why do you have such a love for art blocks?
I think it's just so fundamentally different than almost everything else, and it's so purely native to blockchain technology. Like the long form generative art that art blocks is, and the generative art is, like there are other art blocks, other generative art platforms, is something that is literally not possible without blockchain technology. So most other things can basically be done without the blockchain when it comes to NFTs. Obviously, there's increasingly new innovations and other things can't be done without the blockchain, but art blocks is just perfect. It's like generative art has existed since the 50s, since the 60s, but it's always been this tiny niche subculture of art, and the artist could never make that much financial success, but there was always a group of artists trying to use computers and technology and automated systems to create art. And then blockchains came along and smart contracts came along. And the way it used to be was that a generative artist would generate maybe 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 outputs from their algorithm, and they might pick their favorite 10 or 25 or 50 and sell those prints. And like that was what generative art was. And that worked for them and for like a small group. But it was difficult to sell. Like the way it works with NFTs is that an artist creates a piece of code, the algorithm, they upload the entire code to the blockchain, at least with art blocks. And then the time of mint, when someone goes to buy a piece from this collection and purchase it, there is a transaction hash that every transaction on the blockchain has. And part of that hash, that seed phrase, not the seed phrase, the seed is input into the algorithm as the element of randomness. So the output, the actual art piece, is not known and not created until the time of mint. The artists themselves don't know what the output is exactly going to look like. And so there's this beautiful co-creation moment where the collector, the piece could not be created without the artist and the collector and the blockchain. And it's beautiful. And once you start digging deeper into the technology and then the art and learning about the artists and how they think about this and look at some of the outputs, and it's this really deep but fulfilling and rewarding rabbit hole. And the art exists 100%, well, effectively 100% on chain. You don't have any dependencies on IPFS, or you don't have any dependencies on OpenSea or a centralized entity. There have been instances where this happened early on. The art blocks website and renderer went down, and someone recoded basically a renderer and said, all right, well, you don't need art blocks. You've got the code on chain and you've got the token ID hash. Let's just recreate it on a new website. And I think within a few hours, someone had done that and people were able to view their art. And so as long as the Ethereum blockchain exists, and then like a couple other things like JavaScript library called P5JS, but like that's even more decentralized than Ethereum. And then the art will always exist. And so it's like you're not reliant on a team, you're not reliant on a roadmap, you're not reliant on them to deliver something. It's like you've bought art, the art exists, it will exist forever. As long as generative art is a thing in the future, which I really truly believe it will be, art blocks, generative art in general, to me is just, it's the epitome of NFTs.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch the recent surge of art blocks overall. Obviously, they ended their initial collections, and that has led to a massive uptick in price. And it's really curious that it's really become a safe haven for a lot of people that are investing in NFTs. Like they've moved to not only art blocks, but just art specific projects that are entirely focused on art. And I wonder if you have any thoughts on the commentary that had been along for the longest time, which is, what's the utility? What's the utility? You've got artists like Drift who has to come out when he releases edition piece and be like, the art is the utility. And so it's really interesting to see all of these quote unquote like brands or utility PFPs be going down in price while everyone moves over to the ones that don't technically have any utility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think the reason a lot of people are flooding and flocking to art, and whether it's generative art, one-of-one art, is because the art is the utility, because there's no other utility. There are no other dependencies on the value of the thing. People just want to collect it, and there are a lot of people that collect it without any intention of selling it. And you compare that to, say, your random PFP project, or even your sort of blue chip PFP project like a Bored Ape or a whatever Doodle Moonbird. I would say the vast majority of people holding those have a exit plan. They're like, when if it gets a certain price, I'm going to sell. They might like it. They might like being part of the community and maybe like the art, but it's less of a collector item, I think, and less of a long-term conviction for most of them. And a lot of them are hoping that the team is going to deliver some utility, and that being part of the community will give them access or services or a product or discounts or perks or anything like that. And I mean, that's fine and great, and that's a good use case of NFTs, these membership token things. I mean, we have that, but it's very different to art, and like it's just fundamentally different. And so I think that with art being the utility, and the understanding that that's the utility, the expectations are very clear, and then all of a sudden it's kind of harder for the price to just nosedive and tank, because if you assume as time goes on that most people that bought the art bought it because of the art and not to flip it if it goes up 20%, then it's more likely to hold price. And then if more people enter the space, more people learn about art, generative art, the artist behind it, there is still the potential of price appreciation, but it's usually not the like number one factor for a lot of people. It's a combination of things more than other projects, I would say.
Yeah, I think what you're starting to see is like a bifurcation of the market where generative art and one-of-ones are being treated more and looked at more as their fine art counterparts, where people that are investing in fine art don't expect, nor are they looking for a liquidation event anytime soon. Like most of those people are buying and holding for the long term. And then you compare that to these brands, and it would be like buying into a public brand, or thinking through, what it would be to have something more fungible and liquid that you could get in and out of. And so I think it naturally is bringing about like very different personas that are attracted to either of those. Whereas it's more short term, you're looking at like the day-to-day price action, you're waiting for updates from the team and communication, versus nope, I'm buying this for the art and the upside, but I know that this is a long-term thing. I'm not looking for like a get rich quick. And I think because of that, you just get more diamond-handed holders, which ultimately prop up the price anyways.
Yeah, effectively. I mean, one of the best metrics for that is like looking at the percentage of a collection that's listed. Right. And you look at your regular PFP project, a 10K project, they'll range between maybe like 8% listed to 20% listed is kind of the rough range. Obviously, if there's like staking or nesting involved, it's significantly different. But assuming none of that, that's kind of rated. Maybe like 5-6%. I don't know what Bored Apes are at. They range from 500 to 1,000. You look at an art blocks collection, and like maybe there's 1,000 in the thing, and there's like 28 listed, or some of the collections are really crazy, and even like the ones that aren't crazy, they're like 10-12%. Like I'm talking about the ones that have been around for a year plus. The newer collections have a higher percentage listed, but because people are still trying to buy, especially art blocks to flip, because it has been so profitable historically. But over time, if you like go back and look at the season 1, the season 2, the season 3 collections, they're the ones that have the smallest percentage listed, because over time the distribution has shifted from flippers to collectors, and the collectors don't list, that they have no intention of selling. So out of a collection of 200, sometimes there's literally 1 or 2 listed for sale, and it's this really interesting phenomenon that doesn't really exist with other like PFP collections usually.
Agreed. It's really interesting to watch this maturation cycle that happens at an accelerated pace. And to your point of like moving from flippers to long-term holders and what that ultimately does to the number of holders over time is fascinating. I want to move on. So I dove into a few of your letters, and for the audience who don't know, Zeneca has some long form writing in the form of letters that he puts out every now and again, and I've really enjoyed getting to dive into some of the backlog. The most recent one you launched was around how do we onboard billions to Web3, and you discussed after going to the Web3 Expo in Vegas, what you saw as the 3 major pillars of onboarding. One being education, the second being infrastructure, and the third being a mentality and perception shift. So I want to dive into each of those, starting with education. This is something that has clearly been very important to you and how you operate and what your mission statement is for Zen Academy and just broadly operating in the space. Why do you feel education is so important?
I mean, I think education is just the key to almost everything in life. If you look at things like life expectancy and, really any metric for success throughout the world, education improves it. And things like poverty, crime rates, just happiness, they all... Actually, I'm not sure about happiness, but the other ones tend to go up when education increases and lives tend to be better. And I think that it's no different when it comes to improving onboarding, expanding this space or any space. Education is just key to so much in life, and specifically in Web3 and NFTs, the learning curve is so steep and it's treacherous and it's complicated, it's dangerous, that we need a lot of good education to help people like understand this space. It's not, the subject matter is not easy. It's not something that many of us are, like most people aren't technologically sophisticated. They don't know cryptography. They don't understand the tech behind it. So we have to use analogies and simple language and compare it to things that people understand to help them understand what's going on. And we need to have people understand what's truly going on in order for the entire thing to work. Like blockchains, they rely on decentralization, self-custody of assets, and true ownership. And, of course, there are these like crutch solutions like decentralized exchanges and third parties custodying your assets. And those are great, and they help, and they help the onboarding process and help bridge people. But, they're not true decentralization, true crypto, true blockchains. And eventually, if we want this future to pan out the way that I think we all want it to, we need people to be able to own their own assets and take control of them without losing them to a scam, because they're all the rage these days, and they have been for a while, unfortunately. And so educating people about the scams and about how to protect your assets and all of that is super, super important.
And it sounds like you very much believe in a self-custody future. There's been a conversation whether we believe the centralized solutions of today are fine. I think given the recent blowups of centralized solutions, a lot of people are coming off of that. And one of the phrases, if you've spent some time in crypto, would be not your keys, not your crypto. This idea that if they are on centralized exchanges, ultimately you do not still have control. And so it's really interesting to hear you say that, like, in order for us to get to this place of everyone self-custodying their assets, a lot of education needs to take place, and a lot of infrastructure, which we can dive into next, is going to need to be required, because the idea, like, I think you call it your mom test. The idea of calling my mom and trying to like walk her through storing her seed phrase gives me anxiety. Like I truthfully don't think I could recommend that my parents like set up a MetaMask right now.
Yeah. No, it doesn't make sense for that to happen either. And so I do believe that the future is everyone is self-custodying in one form or another, but I think it's going to be a generational shift, or maybe 2 generations before we get there, because it is so different to the world as we know it. Everyone is used to having these guardrails and having a forgot password button. You have your credit card gets stolen, you call the bank, they freeze it, and then they refund you, and you have insurance, and they have insurance, and if the bank goes under, the government might bail them out, and we're just used to this world. Whereas most people are not used to this world of self-custodying assets. So in order to get there, it's going to take us decades. And so I think we're going to live in this, and so that's why we need these decentralized, centralized finance, or centralized, decentralized financial platforms and institutions to help the onboarding process and to help people who can't or shouldn't have full custody of their assets. So we're going to live in this like Web 2.5 world, honestly, for like decades. But we need to improve them as well, like as we see with FTX and as we've seen with Celsius and all of these other platforms that have kind of gone under. There needs to be better transparency and trust placed in them. Otherwise, we're not going to go mainstream. So the space, we have our work cut out for us, but it's to my mind, it's inevitable. The technology is just simply too good.
I agree. And I think it also is going to require a behavior shift as well. And it's analogous to how you develop code in crypto as well, right? Like if you're coming from a Web 2 background and you're a developer, you can create code and then update it if you make a mistake. Whereas in Web 3, if you create a contract, like that's it. It's a one-way, and at Amazon, we would call these one-way and two-way doors. And so that is very much a one-way door. A lot of things in crypto are one-way doors. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't step through them. It just means that you really need to think through and do the work up front so that you understand the implications of your actions. And that is, if you just think of psychology in general, of you have this like two-sided brain, and everyone very quickly wants to act with intuition and go as fast as possible, when often the best solution is to delay your intuition and really think through logically the steps that you're taking. It's not an easy thing. It like kind of goes against our nature, but it is something that's going to be required if we want to be able to bring more people into the space.
Yeah. 100%.
So I want to talk about your 30 days of NFTs before we get into infrastructure, because I think it's a super cool initiative. I love that it was launched on email. Can you talk a bit more about why you created this program, why you did it on email instead of anywhere else?
Yeah, so 30 Days of NFTs, which anyone can find at 30daysofnfts.com, was an idea that Emily, who heads up marketing and community at Zen Academy, came up with about 3 months ago. She had this idea, and it's basically to have a website, just a one-page website where people can go to, enter their email address, and then every day for 30 days, they'll receive a 3 to 5 minute read, something really small and digestible in simple English, teaching them about the basics of really NFTs, but also a little bit about blockchains, obviously, because that's required. And day one is like, what is an NFT? Day two is what is a blockchain? And then we get into what is a wallet, how to set up a wallet, different types of wallets, eventually what is Discord, and so on and so forth. Because it's really overwhelming to sort of be a self-learner. And like, if you want to learn about NFTs, there's no real great way to start or where to go. You go to Google, you go to YouTube, you go to Twitter, you ask a friend, and they send you to those places, and you start reading, and then you fall down rabbit holes, and you don't know, like, there's no structure, and like from 1 to 2 to 3, and you don't know what's right and what's wrong. And so we just wanted to create this one-stop shop for pure beginners. And the reason we're doing it over email is because everyone has email. With Twitter, with Discord, even with Instagram, with some other gated platform, you introduce friction where some people might not have it, and then they also have to go to that platform to consume the content. Even if it's on YouTube, they have to go to YouTube to consume it, and some people aren't necessarily going to be checking YouTube all the time. Whereas with email, we go to where they are, and most people will, especially if they're signing up for an email course, they'll check their email, but most people already check their email every day, multiple times a day. And it's just a great way to go directly to them where they're comfortable. And it's also a thing of like, they then have it, like they can go back and reread and reread and know exactly where to find it in their email. It's not, they don't have to remember, oh, did I bookmark that website? Where did I hear that thing? It's just right there. So it's combination of all those things, and it's honestly the thing I'm most proud of that we've done over the last year. I'm so happy with it, and it's getting a really good reception already.
That's fantastic, and it's something I'm actually planning on sending to my parents. So thank you for creating that, because it's tough.
Amazing.
Like, I think about the hours that we had to put in, right? Like, I think people take that for granted when they spend so much time in the space, that it was nights, weekends. For me, it became my job. Like, literally started leading Web3 at my last company. And so something that was a hobby that I was doing all the time fully became work, play, and everything. And just to stay up in this space now, there's so much tribal knowledge that's built up. So being able to break that up in bite-sized pieces and recognize that, like, this is not the main thing in people's lives. And if we want them to come on board with this mission, that we have to put it in a way that's presentable and palatable and doesn't require them to, like, watch 5 hours of YouTube videos just to figure, simple concepts out.
Yeah.
Well,
100%.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to send that around. Want to dive into the next one, which is infrastructure. I know this is the one area you say you don't dive as much into, but I am curious if there are anyone who's building in the, like, UI UX space that you're really excited about. Any products that you think are going to help bridge the Web 2 to Web 3. Anything in this space regarding infrastructure.
Yeah, I can't think of any specific product or person. It's just general UI and UX improvements, because it's really clunky and confusing and not good right now. Probably a good example is we're seeing a lot more platforms or buying NFT options with credit card. And so now all of a sudden, the infrastructure, like a year ago, 12 months ago, 18 months ago, used to be, if you wanted to buy an NFT, you had to basically get a MetaMask wallet or another wallet set up and go to a centralized exchange, fund that, withdraw. Sometimes there was a delay. You had to wait 6 days. If it was Coinbase, apparently they have a long wait, and all this kind of stuff. And then you have to, just deal with understanding all of that. And now a lot of platforms say, oh, you can just buy with a credit card. And then, we'll just create the wallet in the back end. And, if and when you want access to it, great. You can see your seed phrase and it's just yours, and we have no access. They found solutions to that issue, and I think that is one of the biggest infrastructure improvements that we've found in the short term. And I think continued innovation in those areas is really going to help us go mainstream.
The credit card payment, it's interesting how the perception of that has changed as well. I remember, like, very anti. Also, like, I don't want to see NFTs on Nifty that I'm buying in USD. Like, it immediately would, like, skeeve me out how much I was spending. But it's interesting to think through the onboarding flow of, like, Reddit avatars, the collectibles that they recently dropped, and the ability to pay with a credit card, and even how they obfuscated crypto as much as possible until you needed to use it, which I think we're going to see more and more of, where the technology fades to the background and it becomes on a need to know basis instead of something that is constantly in your face. And, like, I kind of view it as if it was a car, a lot of the cars that we're driving right now in crypto today have no body. Like, they're literally just all of the individual parts, and you can see how they all work and how they move, and, like, you have to interact with them. Whereas where I think we go is having a car that is fully built out with a body and kit and everything on top of it. And so you don't need to know the inner workings. Like, it just gets you where you need to go. And so I think we'll see more solutions like that over time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where we're going.
The last piece you talked about, so a mentality and perception shift. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, that's kind of... most people have heard about crypto up until now, and even NFTs most people have heard about, but most people aren't actively involved in the space. And so you have to think about why that is. And I think it's the people that are attracted for the most part are those who are tech-minded, finance-minded, and now with the advent of NFTs, it includes, like, a small subset of artists, gamers, and creators of various varieties, but it's still largely financially backed and based. And a lot of people come into crypto to make money, and that's, like, probably you ask 100 people and 90 plus of them will say, yeah, the reason I got into crypto was because I thought I could make money from it. And most people, while obviously everyone basically is like, oh yeah, I would like to make money, most people are risk averse and they don't want to lose money. And that's one of the other things with crypto, is that you can also lose money. You can very easily lose money, or lose your assets. It's very risky in many different ways. And that, I think, turns a lot of people off. And, people think they conflate NFTs with speculative financial asset. And while a lot of NFTs are speculative financial assets, and they are things that people are trading and investing, and some of them are going crazy and many of them are going to zero, NFTs is a technology. Non-fungible tokens are a form of technology built on a blockchain, which is another form of technology. And there's so much more to it than just simply financial speculation. And we're seeing this even more recently with more and more projects doing soulbound tokens, which literally they're NFTs without the ability to transfer or sell them. So there's no financial speculation. And I think we're going to see more of that, which I think will be good, and more projects that build in a way that eliminates the financial speculation layer of it all.
And you're seeing a lot more projects delay financial incentives, where one example I love is Archive, who's building a decentralized museum. They don't have any NFTs. The way that you participate in their ecosystem right now is you jump on town halls, you jump in the Discord, you vote on which pieces they're going to curate. All that's happening on chain. And then you're accruing points. Those points at a later time will allow you to have a membership NFT. It'll allow you to take in royalties of pieces that they sell. But all of that is very down the line, so that they ensure that they get people that are mission aligned and participating because they believe in what they're trying to build together, which I think is smart. And you've even seen that in the development of projects that have moved from ERC20s. That used to be the way that all these DAOs were created even a year ago. And now you look at the recent projects that are coming up, and they're starting with non-fungible tokens, or they're not starting with a token at all. And so while that can be the reason that people come, it won't be the reason that people stay, particularly in a bear market. And so knowing as a project that you have to build real community, you have to build around a mission statement, I think is critical. And a lesson that a lot of people are learning as these projects are experiencing really dramatic churn, a lot across the board, where you just have holders that are losing money, and they were only there for the money to begin with, so they're out. And so I think that's forcing people to reevaluate how they build to begin with.
Yeah, 100%. The bear market has been a great cleanse, I think, of projects, but also market participants and people, and the people who are sticking around, they're just made of something else, I think. And it's good to see. And I think that people that stick around will be rewarded one way or another, whether it's because something they hold on to does well, but just more than that, it's the information and the education, and the experience that people will, and the connections that people will make in this bear market will, really be amplified when things do eventually turn around, whenever that is.
Too long. So I want to switch gears, hopefully. I want to switch gears a bit to Zen Academy. So I pulled a quote that you wrote. I think it's on your GitHub page or Gitbook page. But you said, more than anything, I wanted to create a cozy little home in the metaverse where anyone, but especially those newer to the space, could enjoy a warm and welcoming environment and feel comfortable asking any questions they might have about the space. That's a very different mission statement, I feel like, than most projects in the space. If you would even define Zen Academy as a project. I would love to hear more about the mission and why you decided to build Zen Academy, and take us through a little bit of the history up to today.
Yeah, so I had the idea for it, I think in July last year. So I hadn't been in the space that long, but we didn't really start building it out and thinking too much about it till October, and then we launched in November. And I basically had decided I want to be full-time in Web3, and I want to do something more than just trading. And I had been creating content, and I saw this giant need for onboarding and educational content. And so I thought, well, this is something that I have been doing, and I can probably continue to do, and I think that the space needs. And so the idea really was to build this one-stop shop for beginners, and have them have a great onboarding experience into the world of NFTs. Didn't realize immediately just how so this idea was before the launch, and then I was like, well, okay, let's do that. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, oh, okay, this is a monumental task to have this one-stop shop. And so then I said, well, maybe let's completely do a 180 and start with just a Discord server, and then over the course of however long it takes, build up to be that place. And so it was with that in mind that we launched, and it was always focused on education and onboarding and the people newer to the space. Now, though, a year in, we are part of the reason we're doing the PFP is because within Zen Academy, we have a lot of, obviously we still want to help onboard people and tailor content towards total beginners, but we've got people that have been in the space for a year or longer. We've got people in there who've been for 5 years. We have developers, we have people chasing alpha and trying to flip. And it's very difficult to cater to a community that's that disparate, where it's on the one hand, you have to explain to people what alpha means, and on the other hand, you have people degen minting into whatever random thing is minting that day. And so kind of our approach forward is to turn the Zen Academy community into two different sections, and leaving the 333 club out of it because that's a slightly different thing. But basically the PFP project will be for the people who are a little more advanced, a little more experienced. They have the current token, and it'll be a max community size of 10,000, and that's where we can do some of the more advanced stuff. And then we're opening up the bottom layer for the onboarding process via soulbound student IDs, and these are things that they'll be free, anyone can get. And the idea is that then we'll have a community of people specifically there to sort of at a beginner's level, and then we can tailor content, communication, and discussions around really beginner-friendly stuff. And so, yeah.
Really smart, because you can't be everything to everyone. And so being able to determine what products make sense for the different community members, and also noting that you mentioned you have people that may have been beginners when they joined, but now their needs and expectations are very different. So being able to grow with them over time, I think is strategically a good call. I'm curious why you decided on profile pictures in general. You could have done membership passes or something else, but why PFP?
Yeah, so when we launched, we did membership passes, ESC 1155s, and I very intentionally didn't want to do a PFP because the space has too many PFP projects, and I think it was the right call at the time. We shouldn't have done a PFP, but now we've got a community, and a lot of community members are saying that they want a PFP, and they were like, it would be cool to have a Zen PFP, a thing to something to represent with on social media, to find other people, to have fun with, to collect. And so with that in mind, we think that it would just sort of strengthen the community and enhance things, rather than we've already got the community. Now the PFP is just sort of almost a reward, almost just a natural evolution and transition, rather than launching a PFP and then trying to build a community out of it afterwards. So, yeah.
You have the community there, and you've been building with them, for a year. And so being able to take in their feedback of what they want, and knowing that they're going to make the lion's share of these PFPs anyways. What went behind the decision to increase the total supply to 10,000? I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I believe that would allow for a couple more thousand people to enter. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we got about 8,000 current Genesis holders, and we have 333 members. So we're going to give the 333 members 3 each. There's a lot of threes, and that'll get us up to just under 9,000. And then it's close to 10K. And then we said, well, we might as well get up to 10K. And the part of the reason is we wanted to make this we were really deciding between two paths. One was, do we make it a paid mint to get the PFP, or a pay reveal or something like that? Because we will need to generate some revenue somehow, and especially with royalties going the way they are, we don't want to rely on those. So, but instead of that, we said, let's make it a free process for current holders, mint an extra 1,100, and then as a project, we'll sell those, and via an application process, so one per person at some sort of discount to whatever the floor is at the time. So then the people buying get a deal, and then the community size expands. We can generate significant revenue because we're selling tokens. We're not relying on secondary royalties, and the tokens have value because the community has built up over the course of a year and value them or whatever the market does. And that's one of the primary reasons for getting us up to 10K. So
the idea basically, you have floor prices already established for 333 and for Zen Academy Genesis. The idea is once those get burned for chest, you'll look at whatever that floor price is and determine what the mint price is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Basically, yeah, we don't have an exact metrical formula yet, but we'll be looking closely at the floor price and maybe the historical floor price over a period. And then we'll do the application process maybe a month before the PFP reveal begins, or maybe even less. We'll start it a while back, but then, we'll finish it then. And then yeah, we'll sell them at some discount to floor, so people are getting a good deal, but also that it's not like a pure arbitrage opportunity, so people don't buy and then immediately flip. And we got to figure out the specifics. But I think there's something to it, and I think it's really.
So
I'm excited.
I'd love for you to
approach.
talk a bit about the application process, like what makes a good application or applicant for Zen Academy.
Yeah, so the application process, we're still fleshing out. It's not going to happen until December or January is when we'll open it up. But honestly, the core thing is we just want people that are good people and they want to be part of the community. And they're like, we're not looking for people that can come in and help add to the ecosystem. We don't necessarily want devs and lawyers and graphic designers and anyone like that. Is more like, who can we help? And if they're part of the community, how can we like help each other out? And, if they get along well with the community and share our values and our culture and our ethos, then I think it will be a really good match. And if they're excited to join us, then we're excited to have them. And yeah, I think it works really well with.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the best approach that we have right now. Is I know there's been like some backlash to applications and is it fair distribution, but ultimately I don't know of another better solution, and it allows you at least to see the work that they've already put into the space or what their intentions or what their stated intentions are. And so I think it's the most fair distribution model that we have. I do wonder, this is pulling from another one of your letters around impossible expectations. One, if you could explain the thesis around that and where it came from. I believe you wrote it after Moonbirds, when there was like the massive, exactly, like the massive blow up around CC0. This is something that you're going to have to deal with now, and maybe something you already have, but how do you think about managing those expectations?
But yeah, impossible expectations is an idea I've had in my mind for a long time, because it really is impossible as a founder to balance all the expectations of a 10K, a large community. And specifically with Moonbirds and their decision to go CC0, obviously there were like very mismatched expectations and a lot of unsettlement within the unsettling feelings without the community. So it's definitely something that we have to deal with. And I think our approach is to just generally temper expectations, under-promise, over-deliver, be clear and transparent for the most part. And it's worked well for the last year. And I think it's the approach we're going to continue to take. And I think it'll keep working well.
Let you go. So before, what we ask every guest is what their one big idea is from this conversation. And so one thing that you want to leave the audience with. One big idea.
It's something that's just been going around in my head. It's not really an idea. It's more of a fear, but it's the AI. I think we're all underestimating how impactful it's going to be. And I think that the sooner people realize that this is going to change literally every aspect of our lives, the less impacted you might personally be by it. And I think that it's going to change, again, literally everything. But at the end of it, and it is scary, if you might lose your job, if everyone might lose their jobs and AI is just replacing everything. But I think at the end of the day, AI is a tool. It's like any tool. It's like blockchain. It's like computers. It's like a calculator. It's something that is meant to help our lives. And I think that it will help our lives as long as we're just smart and conscious about it. And I think that the people who can figure out how to use AI to sort of unlock potential and businesses and whatever like that, they'll be the ones that thrive the most in the coming years. So don't sleep on AI, basically.
There's plenty out there. Zeneca, can't thank you enough for jumping on. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for listening to this week's edition of One Big Idea. As a thank you, head to onebigidea.xyz to claim your free OG status NFT. I'll be closing off minting after this initial run of episodes, so be sure to grab yours before they are gone. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.